Good morning, campers, and welcome to Radio Camp Half-Blood. I'm B,
And I'm Zach.
and this week we watched the 2010 movie Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief.
And this was certainly a shocking movie.
We're going right into the puns, just coming in with puns blazing.
We might as well start because this was not a fun movie. We might as well, have the fun first, and then we'll talk about, why we hated this movie second.
Why we suffered greatly. I mean, I wish it was worse in a way, because then at least it would be so bad that it would be funny, but it was just sort of not enjoyable to watch.
For me, I love bad movies. They're so funny they're bad, or so bad they're good. And this movie was just painful to watch. And I'm not going to try to attack this from a book perspective. I'm going to try to attack this from a filmmaking perspective, and how the best way to put it is I would rather watch a Care Bears movie than watch this movie again. There's movies that are so dumb that they're meant just for babies, and I feel like Percy Jackson hyphen The Lightning Thief hyphen The Olympians hyphen this movie sucked. So if you guys are don't like the idea that we're going to be just completely butchering this movie, it's okay to turn off this episode, because we're going to go completely in depth on why this movie sucks on both a narrative perspective and a filmmaking perspective, and lastly, a Percy Jackson perspective.
As an adaptation, it fails pretty spectacularly.
If I gave this book, as a teacher, gave this a letter grade, I would give it a Z.
A Z. A Z for seriously bad.
Yeah, it's very bad. Yeah, so did you ever watch this movie? Actually, no, you have never watched this movie until right now, and you probably will never watch this movie ever again.
I really am not. I have seen passing glances of it, because it sometimes plays on TV. It was just weird. The acting was strange and stilted, and even the parts that they got right, that was sort of a one-to-one adaptation from the book, somehow felt lifeless and strange. The way that the dialogue was constructed was very uncomfortable, the way they established certain exposition things. One example especially is whenever Percy talks about having dyslexia or ADHD, it's said in such a weird, uncomfortable way that a human would never talk. It's oh, I'm a loser, I have ADHD. No one would say it that way.
No, it's more the way they had it in the movie was I'm a loser, this dyslexia isn't helping. I think it's being accelerated by my ADHD. Wait, why does a human say it like that? Logan Lerman, if you look off screen, they had to green screen out the plug they used to plug Logan Lerman in for this movie.
Right, yeah, exactly. It seems like he's very much going through the motions, not to mention the fact that the characterization is totally different, because here he's a 16-year-old as compared to a 12-year-old in the book, which I think totally changes the dynamics of the characters.
Yeah, no, I think the problem with this, we'll get into it, is it's a really weird transition between the way that I would describe this movie, and we're probably going to break it down when we get to the Percy Jackson aspects of it, but the one thing they messed up with the most, and I'm looking at this more on a filmmaking level, let's just say you're fresh, you've never seen Percy Jackson, I get it, you'll get, there'll be a general audience that's supposed to see this movie, it's not supposed to be for Percy Jackson fans, I get that. And what happens is that here you have no characterization whatsoever. Why do I care about these people whatsoever?
Yeah, it's really strange because they add things that weren't there to waste screen time where they could have been, characterizing. They were very much sketches of characters in a lot of ways. I didn't really get a lot of motivation behind them. Percy, they rushed so quickly through the thing with him at Yancy Academy and the Furies and all of that you don't really get a sense of him being a quote-unquote loser or struggling in school, or how long he's been pushed around to different schools, and why he feels he's an outcast in some way. And I think that's a large part of his motivation in the book. So it just feels you don't really, you get that, okay, he cares about his mom, she has this gross husband. Is he also a husband in the books, or no?
Yes, he's his stepdad. It's not hi, this is Percy Jackson, this is my mom's step-boyfriend. I feel the problem with this movie is it butchers the characterizations, even like I said, like on a filmmaking standpoint, because you have Annabeth. So B, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tell you a question and you can answer it back to me, and this is
Yeah.
gonna be really easy.
Okay.
Without describing what Annabeth looks like, describe to me her character and who she is as a person in the book.
She's very determined. She wants to have like an adventure, I guess. I think she's strong-willed. She's lived at Camp Half-Blood for a long time, so she's like estranged from her family. Those are kind of the main broad strokes, I guess, of her character.
Now, can you describe her in the movie?
They take her character and they fuse it with what's her name? What like they who was the child of Ares that
Clarice.
Clarice, yeah. It's almost like they take parts of her character and infuse that into Annabeth's character, which also you don't see Clarice in the movie, but it's like she's there and she's like in the middle of a sword fight, and then Percy sees her.
Yeah, and because he's like a hot-blooded male, he's just like, oh, who's that over there?
Yeah, he immediately becomes like a wolf whistling, like, hard eyes, like cartoon character, and he's just like, oh, who's that? What's her name? And then Grover's like, oh, she'll rip you to pieces, which is not even really the characterization of Annabeth at all in the books. Like, she's not like a ruthless person. She's capable and competent in fighting, but she's not like...
Well, in this, she comes off as an idiot. Like, there's nothing that she does other than to be there and look pretty. That is literally what this movie is to her. And I think it's kind of sickening a little bit.
There's definitely that too. I think also because they age up the characters, there's way more like weird romantic stuff going on right away. And I don't know if Percy and Annabeth are like more of a ship later on. Like, I could imagine that they are in the later books, but like immediately, like before he even meets her and knows her name, he's like, oh, like he wants to date her. Like, you can tell that, and the movie wants to establish that. And that's not at all how their relationship starts. It's supposed to be that they're friends and that they're like unlikely friends in a way because their parents are rivals to some extent because of like ancient Greek drama, basically.
Yeah, and even like with the dialogue and everything, the problem with like this movie is I think all the dialogue is so painfully read. Like, this was everyone just like phoning it in, even though like this is kind of like they have so many great tenured actors such as Pierce Brosnan, Sean Bean. I always forget the guy's name's Poseidon, but he's like he plays like a bunch of video game characters, which is really weird.
Yeah, he also plays his name is Kevin McKidd.
Yeah, Kevin McKidd. Like, he's so McTavish in Call of Duty, which is ironic because they play Call of Duty in this game.
He plays Owen Hunt, the badass like army trauma surgeon in Grey's Anatomy. And I only know that because literally I was watching Grey's Anatomy yesterday and he was a character. And I was like, oh my god, it's Poseidon.
There's like so many other like weird people that are in this movie. Again, there's like everyone that, if individually these people are, I would consider them okay actors. But together it's like this weird like amalgamation of terribleness. Like, if you compare, like, don't say, if you go and pick and choose like people from watch their other individual things, they're hilarious. Like, the guy that plays Grover, he's in Tropic Thunder and he's like one of the best parts of that movie. The big compare and contrast is obviously this movie was made to kind of fill, I guess it's like very late in the game, trying to fill in with Harry Potter money, and how it's ironic because the person that directed this movie is Chris Columbus, and Chris Columbus did the first two Harry Potter movies. So he did Philosopher's Stone and he did Chamber of Secrets. And it's so painfully obvious that you can see, like, it's almost like the weird, like, compare and contrast. Like, you can see where they look the same, and then how it's like they take the source material and they go in two different ways. Is it because this is Fox and Harry Potter was Warner Brothers? Or was it because J.K. Rowling had all say when it came to the movies? So she was like, this is whatever you're doing. Because I guarantee if it was just Chris Columbus and the writer did their own thing, the first two Harry Potter movies would be almost like this, I think. But J.K. Rowling had all this power over it, whereas I'm sure Rick Riordan didn't know anything about this. And he was just like, yeah, it's fine. Like, he just like put out his hand and all of a sudden like a check appeared. Like, oh, look at that. A check appeared. You guys are good. Which is not to say anything bad about like Rick Riordan. Like, hey, money's money. But like, there's like a certain thing where it's like, I kind of feel like the author of the book, if they're still alive, should have at least some say in the material.
Yeah, I think so too. Because I think it's not just about plot too, right? I think it's helpful to have someone there to, I guess, develop tone for the movie. Like the movie just had like the wrong tone in a lot of ways. Like I think that might have a lot to do with like the way that different plot points were spaced out, but also just like the settings didn't seem quite right. Like even Camp Half Blood like didn't really look like the description in the books, and like they didn't even have like the very iconic.
Basically, Greek Hogwarts. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah, I think that was intentional almost, like, oh, let's make it more like Hogwarts because people are really into Harry Potter.
Yes, and this is 2010, so they had just finished, I want to say, Half-Blood Prince, or they're in that time where it was almost time for Harry Potter to like wind down its cycle. Like we need to have the next big thing. But the weird thing is with this movie is it's almost like a standalone movie all on itself.
Yeah, you don't need to know anything about Percy Jackson, which is, I mean, fine. It's fine for the beginning book of a movie series, I guess, but it doesn't make me feel like I'm entering a magical world. Like you don't feel really included in the lore. It doesn't have that same, and maybe this is just also like a bias on my part because I watched Harry Potter when I was a kid when it first came out, and that has like a certain nostalgic element to it that like maybe I do watch the first movies and they have really terrible CGI and the acting can be a little bit weird, especially from some of the kid actors, but I still find it enjoyable. While this I'm like, oh, well, this like CGI looks really like cartoony and strange. And
well, okay, there's a difference between though, B. The first two Harry Potters came out in the early 2000s.
Yes, that's true too. They're completely different times.
They're completely different times, but you can't say it's the same director, so it's the same, technically the same vision. The same, I mean, obviously directors have different, visions movie to movie, but it is so blatantly obvious. They told Chris Columbus, hey, make us a Harry Potter-esque movie that isn't Harry Potter because you don't want to do Harry Potter anymore. And we'll give you like Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. Boom. It's almost like sickening a little bit, in my opinion.
It feels like they're going through the motions almost, I guess, is like the vibe that you get.
And I can go through this beat by beat. So the beginning of this movie opens up with Poseidon and Zeus standing on top of the Empire State Building talking, and it's all dark and gloomy. Harry Potter opens up almost the same way with Professor McGonagall and Professor Dumbledore. Pretty much in a dark, gloomy place, and it's dark out.
Discussing, yeah. Which is totally, it's, again, another weird thing that they didn't need to change. Like, instead of immediately starting on Percy, I mean, you don't need that exposition of them talking to each other because you could learn that later. Instead, they could have spent more time on Percy in Yancey Academy trying to like establish the fact that he was struggling in school, because he says a lot about how he has dyslexia and ADHD, but you only see like a little bit of that actually represented in the plot. Like you only see him like, okay, he struggles answering a question with Miss Dodds,
the English teacher, not the math teacher, which they automatically messed up, which is even funnier.
I guess because they wanted to make a point about dyslexia, so they had to have like that's another weird thing too, is like the magical realism thing that they do to represent his dyslexia, which is like the letters moving around sort of and how he can't read it.
For me, I think that's perfectly acceptable, especially for a visual standpoint. I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. You have to show it. Like, how does one, I mean, besides if you have dyslexia, you're obviously going to laugh at it because that's not how dyslexia works. But, like, how would you convey it to an audience that doesn't know what a person with dyslexia would feel like?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, I totally get it from a movie-making standpoint. It is very funny, though, to see because, like, anybody who knows anything about dyslexia knows that that's not how it works. But, again, we're also talking about a book series that, posits the theory that some people have dyslexia because their brains are hardwired to read Greek. So we're already in kind of ridiculous territory to begin with.
Oh, well, I mean, it's kind of like the narrative of Rick Riordan as, having these disabilities or superpowers. Here it's just like having these powers or just having powers. And it's like none of it really comes into play either. It's just, oh yeah, it's like these are the things that keep you alive and stuff. But, as the movie goes on, Percy Jackson is like this weird, angry kid who probably listens to like MCR and Green Day.
He always seems annoyed. Get away from my mom, Gabe. And he's very angsty in a way that like Percy never was angsty. Like he seemed more like a frightened child. Again, the aging up thing I think affects that to some extent.
It's like having the beginning of this movie, Percy can't really defend his mom, but he wants to. And then at the end of the movie, like the book, Percy like kind of like he has all this power and is defenseless, but in the end, it's his mom who makes a decision.
Yeah, that's like a whole other weird thing about the Medusa. We're like jumping way ahead because that's like literally like the post credits thing.
Well, yeah, no, but that's the fine with this. If you're listening to this, obviously you've gone through the whole series, or you want to have a review for this movie, which we've already said it's bad, so you don't have to watch it.
Yeah, don't spare yourself.
With the movie, I feel like a lot of the crucial plot stuff is almost ignored in the attempt of, okay, B, here's another question I'm going to ask you. Because you're the person that, just finished reading this book. I've read these books a lot. It is this. Describe the plot of Percy Jackson in, like, the elevator pitch of Percy Jackson. Not the movie, but the book. What is the elevator pitch?
Well, the elevator pitch would be Percy Jackson, kid having trouble in school, actually has magical powers because he's a demigod. His dad is Poseidon. He has to go to this camp for demigods where he receives from an oracle like a prophecy about how he needs to go west to find the underworld and retrieve the stolen bolt from Zeus because there's like a war brewing between the gods, basically.
Yeah, so what you've just described is I kind of like put it down more into its like base form because that's a really good elevator pitch. But here it's like Percy Jackson kid finds out his dad's a god and they have a cross-country road trip to receive an item that, will end a terrible war. This movie had neither a prophecy or a road trip.
Yes, exactly. Like all of the plot was completely changed. It was so strange.
The problem with this movie also, it's almost like the best way to put it is Chris Columbus, or the writer, really liked Dragon Ball Z. Because it's like, we have to collect these magical pearls. 3 different specific locations.
It completely changes the plot, right? Because we talked about the pearls extensively when we talked about the book, and he receives those from Poseidon way later as a way to escape the underworld.
Well, it's
once
not even
he visits.
that. It's just, even in the book and in the movie, they're MacGuffins. Like, they serve the one purpose and one purpose only. But here it's just like, well, we could just have like a nice road trip movie. It's just like these kids finding who they are as teenagers. Or we can have it where we skip all that and we go cross country to murder people and vandalize, public national parks.
In not having a prophecy at all, he doesn't get to see the oracle. You don't like have any of that anticipation about what the oracle is going to mean later on, and it completely changes the motivations for why they're going across the country, because they like sneak out of the camp and go off on their own. Like there's no like Chiron being like sending them off and giving them all this stuff and saying, okay, now is your time for your quest, which is the whole point of Camp Half-Blood, is that you get assigned these quests.
Well, also the problem with this is, first off, the devil makes an appearance in this movie. And he flat out tells Percy, I have your mom, and you should, like, come with the bolt. It's like, let's just make Hades as evil as humanly possible to understand for our stupid audience members.
Oh, that's another thing, too, is Hades, like, isn't, like, a reasonable guy in this. He's, like, just a really stock villain.
Yeah, which is really weird because it's, I always know his stage name. I always forget his real name. It's Alan Partridge. He's in a bunch of stuff. Like, if you saw him and stuff, he's in Hamlet, too. He's in a lot. He's a great comedic actor, and here he's, like, Mick Jagger, but like he's given up on life more. The problem with also having like the Oracle is, they have to rely obviously on the villain of the movie, which is Luke, to get them to frickin' California, which everything about this movie is just like, it's a get to point A to point B to point C to point D. And without having like an Oracle, kind of having like a little bit of a mystery, all the beats of this movie kind of completely fall apart. And I'm not even talking about in a sense of like narratively from the books, but I'm talking about narratively of a movie. Like, it's not a good standalone movie by itself. If you changed it to like Hero Kid, Lightning Bolt adventure movie, it still would not make sense. Maybe, actually, it might make some more sense to like regular viewing people, but if you go to a lot of movies, this movie sucks on that level because there's like a base level characterization. I hate to use Star Wars, but you can use Star Wars in this example.
I hate to use Star Wars.
It's like Percy's, kind of like the Luke Skywalker. Like, he's like this person that has all these hopes and dreams and wants to like prove himself right, and he has to go on this adventure. save his mom or blow up the Death Star. And here, Percy Jackson, who has no motivation other than everyone keeps telling him he needs to save his mom. Annabeth has no motivation whatsoever. Grover's just there because he's his junior protector and he wants to get his horns. And then with Hades, when we get to Hades, they almost make it like he's going to be the real villain of this movie. And it's just like, well, that's what we're going to now. And the problem, though, is also with this movie is they gut out some of the main characters. They gut out Mr. D. They gut out Ares.
Who's like the secondary antagonist in the book. And they completely cut him out. Yeah, an entire fight scene is cut because of that.
The problem with it is you don't have a crescendo at the end of this movie. Like that, the big centerpiece of the end of Percy Jackson is Percy has to fight Ares on the beach and like California is completely destroyed. Here, there's none of that at all.
Yeah, he returns back to the Empire State Building and he fights Luke. And then Luke's motivation for all of this, because they take out Ares, they also don't even mention anything about Tartarus or the Titans or anything like that. It has nothing to do with the Titans having some sort of thing against the gods. It's like Luke by himself deciding that the demigods need to take over. It's a completely different motivation.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the problem with it. Like with Percy Jackson, of course, you know, there's more books, but like there's like this underlining theme of just like people being terrible to each other and like parents being terrible to kids and kids being terrible to their parents. You lose all of that. And also it's like having like at the end having like the Pantheon when Percy actually meets Zeus and all of them, they all look very generic compared to like the way they're kind of set up in the books, which is like they're like the Americana versions of what the Greek gods would be like.
Right, they have their own characterizations. It's almost weird.
Yeah, here they're just like, it's Clash of the Titans, but like in like modern day New York City.
I think the costuming is weird there, and then also in Camp Half-Blood in general. Like, they don't have their camp uniforms, like the very iconic like orange shirt with the Camp Half-Blood thing on it.
Oh no, Grover does. He has like an orange shirt, but that's like in quotation marks. And I'm doing like 27 like quotation marks. He has an orange shirt.
But it's like you see all these kids in like armor,
and they all look like they're in their 30s.
Yeah, they do all look like they're in their 30s.
And like some of them are like really buffed up, like they have like tattoos and like beards, and I'm like,
yeah, all these people, like the youngest person looks 16.
Yeah, and I mean it's like for a camp that's supposed to be for a bunch of kids, it's not like that at all. And okay, people that are probably yelling at us right now is that I understand kid actors grow up. That is perfectly acceptable when you have, you know, if you're going to make like a series. It would make sense to have like you get a kid that's obviously much younger than the age that they're trying to go for, and eventually they'll age up, you know, a la Series of Unfortunate Events or Harry Potter.
Yeah, then you don't get Logan Lerman, who has like facial hair. Like they all are like, you know what I mean? At that awkward age where they're like getting pretty old, where they're starting to look like adults.
Percy Jackson like, hi guys, I'm Percy Jackson. Here it's just like, hey guys, I'm Percy Jackson. Does anyone have a razor?
Yeah, exactly. Like his voice is already like incredibly deep. It's weird. It's very strange.
Hey Grover, my 12-year-old companion who looks like he's like 35.
Like I get that Grover's supposed to have a little bit of a beard or whatever, but isn't that later?
Wisps of a beard he has. He's got a little bit of
he doesn't have
facial
like
hair.
a full he has a soul patch in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, no, and it's really funny because they show like these shots of like Percy like drowning himself, and it's like, oh, this is supposed to be like you have to get this kid, like this is his inner space, and it just looks like really sad and confused. And the first parts of those, I'm not sure if they actually filmed this underwater. I want to say they used a filter. I don't think Logan Lerman would want to hold his breath underwater because if you look at how his hair moves, it doesn't look correct.
Yeah, it looks like they just spiked it and then they like put a filter on the screen or something. Yeah.
I mean, it isn't that it's hard to get underwater shots. It's just a pain in the butt. I'm sure this was a very low budget, you know, mega blockbuster movie. And, you know, the problems with this movie as well is when you get into the actual, okay, so we've already gone past Percy has to go on this quest. And the first place he goes to is Medusa.
Well, he doesn't have to go on a quest. He decides to leave, which is one thing. Yeah, he just leaves.
Oh, he leaves. He just leaves for this quest. I'm so sorry. I'm being very, like, conservative when it comes to he goes on this quest. He decides to, like, go on a suicide mission, I guess.
He just found out he was a demigod, like, that week. And he's like, all right, I'm leaving immediately.
And Grover and Annabeth decide to come and visit him.
And they go to They have like this magical map that tells them where to go that Luke gives them.
So they go to Auntie M's, and this is where they meet Medusa, who like is played by Uma Thurman, and this is I think her second most embarrassing role. Her first being Poison Ivy in Batman and Robin.
Yeah. It's kind of a similar role in some ways, but
Hey, it's Uma Thurman. That's okay. I love Uma Thurman, but like she picks some pretty, or actually not. She doesn't pick them. Her agent picks these really bad scripts for her to do.
yeah. And the CG on Medusa is just bad. It's just bad. The snakes are dumb. The eyes are stupid. They can't even, like, I feel like by 2010 we perfected the eye glow CG, but I guess we can't even do that right because it just looks stupid.
You also forgot the stupidest part about this is she comes in, and you know my first thought it was, I really wish I recorded this, was she has like this weird vague accent and she sounded like the mixture between Coach Genghis and Gunther.
And I forget what she said. She's just like, what a lovely surprise, or something. I forget. It's like some really dramatic.
It's like not even like a transatlantic. It's like a mid-Atlantic accent. It's like in between where it's not quite real, but it's not quite fake at the same time. And she's like trying to be like very suave. And she's like, her costume is like the most baffling thing. Like she's like wearing like a headscarf and like these big old glasses, but then she's like wearing like sexy like leather dress, and I'm like, what?
Oh, it's totally insane. I mean, I was trying to find like a chart that kind of like compared the different character representations of the different like the characters in the books and in the movie, and like the description of Medusa, she's an old Middle Eastern woman with coffee-colored skin. And then in this, she's Uma Thurman. Like, how do you get that? How do you get Uma Thurman from that?
Well, it's not even getting that. It's like also, if we're going on the thing of characterization, when we have Annabeth, she's got brown, very brown hair.
And Annabeth's supposed to have blonde hair, right?
Yes, she's supposed to have very blonde hair. And they messed that up. I mean, we can complain about, like, in Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe doesn't have green eyes. There's actually a reason they tried putting green contacts in and he had an allergic reaction. Did this actress, was she allergic to blonde wigs?
Yeah. Or they could have, I don't know, cast a blonde person. I feel like there isn't a lack of blonde actresses wanting to be in blockbusters. Like
I would imagine, like, when you do the script breakdown, when it's your producers, your set designers, and all the people, hair and makeup, when you sit down to actually do your production meeting, why didn't the hair and makeup person say, oh, obviously, you know, they probably didn't even read the books. I'm going to assume they just had the script, and they, like most good people, they'll just read the script instead of just going back to the source material. Because, you know, they're trying to do their job. They might not have time to read a book. Like, it's possible, because I know in the second one, they actually make her a dirty blonde hair.
Oh, so they change her hair. So they're like, oh, crap, wait.
Yeah. Like they try to correct their wrongs in the second movie, which doesn't work because the damage is already done. Even with, like, Grover, like, Grover I'm fine with, except, like, the CGI legs were, like, a really distracting at times.
Yeah, they were a little bit distracted. Like, the hair looked not correct. He sort of looked like a really low-budget Mr. Tumnus.
Actually, no, Mr. Tumnus was all practical, though, so I think...
Yeah, they should have just done practical effects or something, maybe.
I wish they would have done practical effects, but then again, like, they don't have, like, Chronicles of Narnia money. I guess a really good example for people that are under the age of 12 do not watch. The Thing, the original one from the 80s, has some of the... Actually, not the original. The remake from the 80s with John Carpenter has some of the greatest practical effects. They did a remake of it, or I'm sorry, a prequel in 2010, and they did everything with practical effects, but like, this doesn't look good. So they did it all in CGI, and it is terrible, the CGI.
Yeah, CG often doesn't age well unless you really put effort into it. I feel like it probably didn't look good.
Well, no, it's not that. I mean, you want to know what the best CGI ever is? It's actually Jurassic Park with the T-Rex.
Well, it's also a combination of practical, though.
Not even like with Percy Jackson, like very minor things, okay, like eyes and stuff, that's fine. Hair, you know, I'm fine with that. As long as it's like, there's like a reason for it. It's just like in text or in universe, but they don't, especially with like the Greek gods and stuff. It's just like, they all look generic. Like
Ares is supposed to look like a biker or what, like there's different characterizations of, like, Poseidon's supposed to look like some beach bum who's like wearing, you know, sandals and whatever else. And none of that comes through when you actually see them. It's so weird that they would do that.
It's just cheap. It's cheaper.
Is that cheaper though? Because they could have, I feel like the costuming could have been easier if they made it more specific to the characters.
If this was a different movie, this was like Clash of the Titans or something, it's really good armor and stuff. I like that stuff.
They did really good armar for the wrong movie.
It's the armor for the wrong movie. For your kids' adventure series, and that's not like kids 30 and up.
30 and up.
Like, I just like imagine like if they made this movie now, like if they made the third, fourth, and fifth one, they would have like Steve Buscemi playing Percy Jackson. Hey, what's up, my dudes?
It's just, I feel like we're really ripping on this movie, but I didn't have any joy watching. We tried to watch it together yesterday.
We were like zoning out.
Because it wasn't even like so bad it was funny or anything. I was just like, this is not fun to watch. And that, at the very least, if you're going to make a dumb movie, at least make it fun. But just like the way that, I don't know, I feel like there is a lot of dialogue, but all the dialogue is strange, and it's like no human talks like that.
It's like either it's like a directional thing or like how the script was written. It's a mixture of both, because you can write
Some
stuff.
of the actors are good though, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like it might be a poor direction or it might be a poor script.
Well, it's definitely the script to some extent, because sometimes just the way things are phrased are ridiculous and weird in like a way that no one would ever say.
Oh yeah, no, one of my favorite ones was when they're going to the underworld and Grover gives the guy money and like he burns the money and he's like, what is this? We're in a recession?
Yeah, that felt like very much like a DreamWorks, like, that's a joke that the parents will get, you know?
And there's another one when Percy meets Grover for the first time as a goat person. He's like, well, the political correct phrase is satyr. And I'm like, oh, God.
Oh my God, I rolled my eyes so hard. Like, yeah, I feel like they were trying to be clever, and it was just embarrassing. Like, I don't know.
This person like sat in like a Starbucks and like wrote this movie and thought, I'm going to be clever.
And again, both of those lines are Grover, and that's totally not even his characterization at all. He's never been like the wisecracking character. If anything, that's Percy.
Oh, you forgot the worst part about Grover in this. He's very thirsty. Like every scene that he's in, he goes off screen to talk to a babe.
Yeah, literally. There's the scene in Vegas where he has like all the girls surrounding him and he like forgets which one he proposed to. Or then there's like the one where he meets Persephone.
And then there's the first one where Grover meets the girls from the Aphrodite cabin. And like it's just is it supposed to be like, yeah, Grover's like this player type of person.
Ridiculous, because he's supposed to be a nerd, right?
Yeah,
he's supposed to be like an
this
anxious
like
nerd.
wimpy little guy that, you know, finds his strength.
Well, that's another thing, actually, is that Percy's supposed to be a wimp too, right? And Percy's not a wimp in this.
So Percy Jackson is supposed to be the hero's journey. Very obvious when it comes to writing, you know, the person, he starts off as one thing, he goes through all these trials and tribulations, and eventually becomes a much better person in the end, or he becomes more grown up or something. Like, the only time it doesn't happen like this is in Back to the Future. Marty McFly doesn't have that type of thing. Like, he starts off as like this, you know, sassy person, and he ends up like he gets everything he wants in the end, but he doesn't change as a character. That's why in the other ones they had to add, you know, don't call me chicken.
Yeah, but usually it's like you start one place and he doesn't know that he's a demigod and he's like a nerd, and no one, well, he's not a nerd, but I guess he's like a loser.
He's like, I would put it, he's a basic human being.
Well, that's like another thing we talked about, is like, to some extent he has some Mary Sue qualities just because people need to relate to him in the first book. Obviously that changes later on and he becomes more of like a distinct character, but in this, just like all throughout.
Well, I mean, you have to have like those Mary Sue elements in the beginning for like a main character to kind of like, obviously they're the main character.
I don't have a problem with that to some extent. Like, it makes sense that you need to relate to them. Percy doesn't grow as a character here because he stays pretty much the same, and he just he does say, oh, that's a lot to take in when he finds out that he's a half-blood, but he isn't like that blown away, I guess. He immediately adjusts everything. He's like, oh, of course, I can read Greek, that's why I'm dyslexic, and oh, I have ADHD, that's why I have these battle reflexes, and he's immediately like a great fighter. Like, there's no situation where he accidentally is like a bad fighter and he needs to be saved by someone. He's always like saving the day in the end.
Well, I mean, yes and no. Like, when they go to like Nashville to like the Pantheon, that one's Grover's turn to shine, I guess.
That's true.
But I think the best character in this entire movie actually is Uma Thurman's like severed head. because they kept using this head as a stupid prop. It's a really good prop. So whoever did the special effects for this, you guys are amazing. Keep doing what you're doing, because that's actually a really good like cast mold of Uma Thurman's head, especially with all the snakes and stuff. Good job.
Yeah, that looked better than the CGI.
It's obviously better than the CGI, because they fight the Hydra in this movie too.
Yeah, which is completely another added thing, because they don't fight Cerberus. Well, Cerberus is later on, but instead they fight Hellhounds instead of Cerberus. And then instead of going to St. Louis and being on the Arch fighting Chimera,
Yeah, the
is that
Chimera. No, Echidna as well. Fighting Echidna
and Echidna,
Chimera.
yeah. And instead they fight.
Which would have made okay. Let's go back for a second. Let's talk about the set pieces in Percy Jackson, the book, and how they would make for a really great road trip movie. You have the scene, obviously, in the beginning with the Minotaur. That's like the first big CGI inspired thing you can have with obviously
And honestly,
the Minotaur.
the CG Minotaur in this wasn't too bad. Like, the design was kind of cool.
It wasn't too bad, but I'm just saying it's like in general, if you were to like plot out a movie, that would be the very first big thing to kind of introduce you to this world. And it's almost like, again, in Harry Potter, with meeting Cerberus, like meeting that in Philosopher's Stone. And then you would have the second thing, which would be the Medusa fight. Like, easily they could cut out the water park segment. You didn't really need that. But you could have kept Ares in like a different like fixture. And, you know, you can go from there. You just trim the fat of things that don't quite work. Like, I don't think the water park thing would work. Once they get to LA, I think all the stuff in hell would have been amazing to see, other than just gigantic lava and fire.
Yeah, that was just all CG. Like, really bad kind of, screensaver level CG.
And they didn't even make like Carrion like interesting at all. He's just like the Crypt Keeper. He kind of reminds me of the Grim Reaper from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Yeah, he's just sort of like a stock kind of guy. Like, he does set fire to the money, and like that's kind of funny, I guess, but like he doesn't show motivation the way he did in the book. Also, again, they made him a white guy, which I'm pretty sure that he's supposed to like have dark skin. Yeah, so literally there's so many weird moments where they just decide to instead cast a white person in a role that like definitely is not supposed to be a white person.
Well, I mean, okay, I don't think it's a matter of just like, blind casting or like, racial bias. I think obviously when they're casting the movie, they're like, well, we're going to have a person, Carrion, he's going to be not a really big character because we're, getting this movie. And we're going to look for someone that just looks like he's gaunt and like deathly. And that's the first person like walked into the casting thing like, that's perfect. Debbie Diggs, get out of here. We don't need you here. We already cast our gaunt guy that looks like a skeleton, a spooky skeleton.
Yeah, he looks like Riff Raff from Rocky Horror.
Yeah, he looks a little bit like Riff Raff. But yeah, it's like that same like I really wish, again, in our perfect world, the script would have been, it would have complemented all this stuff.
Yeah. I think it just drives home the fact that they didn't even look closely at the book at all. The fact that they were like, well, this is like a very basic casting thing.
Like, obviously you can tell that they didn't read this book. They went off the script. Like, I don't like say anything bad about people that do that, because obviously, I do that when I work and do film and stuff. It's not like I'm actively like, they give us a script. Sometimes we'll go back, but it's like obviously the person put a lot of time and research into making the script. This is what we're focusing on, not
yeah.
The
You
other
just have
thing.
to like trust that it's
Yeah.
the thing that you're doing, and you can't question like, oh well, what does it say in the book or whatever. And I do understand that to some extent, but I think
Like even like when we do script breakdowns in theater, because I do that a lot as me being the stage manager, is we have to break down the scripts, and we're not worried about the prior. Like if we do The Tempest, we're looking at the script, but we're looking at how we can do our own interpretation. But it's like, how are we going to do these special elements? How are we going to do like the lighting, the sound, and all these things? We don't worry about how did someone do it before this, the original interpretation. We look at the interpretation we have in front of us. And if Chris Columbus said that's what we're doing, that's what we're doing. Because he's the person that the director has the vision.
it just feels like he didn't do his due diligence, I guess. It's sort of like, oh yeah, I'll make a Percy Jackson movie.
And I'm not even saying anything about Chris Columbus. Like, I think this might have just been like a paycheck, because he does very quality work in a lot of his stuff. Like Mrs. Doubtfire is like one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, I love that movie. And even the first two Harry Potter movies, as stilted as some of the acting can be, and like also there are younger actors in that generally, but it's still like a pretty fun movie to watch, even if there's some cheesy elements to it. Well, like this movie didn't only feel...
It felt sleazy, not cheesy.
yeah, it felt kind of like not very well made, but it didn't even have any kind of like, it was joyless, I guess. It felt
It was almost like a Dementor came by and like sucked the soul out of this movie.
yeah, exactly. It feels like it has like all these like moving parts to a blockbuster movie in a way that it's just like they did movie math or something.
It's like a Roland Emmerich movie a little bit, and how it's like this dumb action movie. It's just like Independence Day, blah, 2012, blah, like
Blah.
blah. That's what I think of. I think of like establishing shot, person going, "My God," and then shit gets blown up.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of like they're using like this template of what these kinds of movies are supposed to look like without like trying to actually think about the source material at all.
And it's also weird because if you look at other examples, okay, everyone ding-a-ling-a-ling. If we look at actually the Jim Carrey version of Series of Unfortunate Events, there's actually some love and commitment into that movie.
Yeah, that's the thing is I was thinking of that when I was watching this is I know that the Unfortunate Events movie wasn't the best movie, but it did feel like they put in the effort to like do really cool set design and like try to get at some of like the interesting mood that came across in the books and try to like transfer that into a movie. And like that's why actually a lot of people like the movies better than the Netflix series. I don't personally agree with that, but they think that the like tonally it fits pretty well. And like the casting is complicated and some people really don't like Jim Carrey's Olaf, and there's a lot of reasons why people don't like it.
When it comes to those people, I always talk to them about it's a matter of budget. If the Series of Unfortunate Events Netflix series it's actually, I would consider it a very small budget show. It's a very, very micro budget show. It isn't like soap opera budget, but it's very moderate for a special effects heavy show. And when it comes to
right, if they had the budget of a movie, then it would be different.
To a budget of a movie, which I think with Fox being acquired by Disney, hopefully, we might see more of this stuff because it's ironic because Disney owns the publishing rights to Percy Jackson.
Right, that's true.
They don't own the movie rights to Percy Jackson, so I would consider. I don't know. Would this work as a TV show? I don't think it would actually. I don't think it's really hard. People are gonna be like tuning out, but it's really hard to make a series that has like so much wealth of stuff.
Yeah, I do think the CG elements would be hard because I mean, even Unfortunate Events, which like it has like magic realism elements, but it doesn't have like magic elements.
Well, even like in the Netflix show, which again, I would consider it a very moderate budget. People are like, oh no. If you look at the numbers, it's a very moderate budget, which I think they do a lot of amazing things with all the special effects and all the like CGI stuff. But even then, you still know it's like CGI. Whereas a lot of the CGI, even in the 2004 movie, because that had a big movie budget, has some really good pieces for the budget that they paid for.
Yeah, and even just like the commitment to like the tone, I guess, like the costuming is like again not book accurate necessarily, but still like interesting, and it feels like there's some effort behind it.
I mean, it would be really dull in Series of Unfortunate Events to just have Violet in the same dress the entire time or Klaus in the same outfit. Like you need to have some variety. That's kind of like when you come to stuff like that, like would you want to wear your same smelly clothes for like 6 books? Or would you rather have like,
definitely not.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
Like there's some things that you can talk about when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah,
like,
but I did think a lot about the Jim Carrey Unfortunate Events movie and like how does it compare and like how it's not the best adaptation necessarily, but as a movie it's still fun to watch. Well, I didn't find this fun at all.
Well, there's nothing fun about it because it's like the humor is from 2010. They play Lady Gaga. Come on.
Yeah, they sure do play. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense because it's Poker Face and they're like at a poker table. And they also play Highway to Hell, which is kind of funny.
There was a part where I could not stop laughing is when they go to the Lotus Hotel, which this is me because I go to Vegas a lot. The font they used for the Lotus Hotel was Caesar's Palace. That's the font they used for Caesar's Palace.
That's the wait. Is this the one time that you laughed? Is that what you?
Oh no! My favorite part is when they eat the edibles, and they go on their magical trip.
Oh, the lotuses.
Yeah, they eat the lotus, and they literally go on like a trip. And this is this for kids now?
Yeah, the screen gets all like loopy and stuff, and it. Yeah, I think it being something that they eat makes it seem way more like, Alice in Wonderland magic mushrooms than like,
Curiouser and Curiouser.
Yeah, then in the book, isn't it just that they use the credit card and then it kind of like allures them to stay?
Well, no, they kind of get fixed into like just being in the place in general and getting all this free stuff, and it's like there's not like they're being drugged, which is more nefarious. And then it's like the weird stuff of like all the waiters and stuff keep trying to like peddle Percy with
Yeah,
eating,
they're like, oh, do you want a Lotus?
You want a
more?
Lotus?
Do
You
want
want a Lotus? And it was like Poseidon had to step in and be like, hey, son, crack is whack.
Yeah, he just like appears in his mind. I don't know why it took him so long. He should have been immediately like, hey, don't go in there. Like, I don't really understand.
But they had to, and conveniently
right, they
found
had to
the
get
pearl.
the pearl, right? But they didn't have to in the book, right? Because it was just a set piece. They just happened to find it, right?
No, they happened to find it because they were looking for a place to escape because the
Right,
police were after
yes.
them, or I can't remember. It was something. Oh no! The zookeeper people were after them, so they hopped into the first hotel because
Because
they.
of the zebra that they release, which is completely cut out as well. None of that.
I mean, that would have
happens.
been like really hard to either get a real zebra or a CGI one, so that's okay.
That's true. Did they bring in the race and stripes zebra?
They just get a horse and they paint it.
All right, they wheel him out. Oh, that would be so sad.
Or it's like almost like Series of Unfortunate Events, like they get like a stuffed zebra and they just put like wheels on it.
Yeah, they just squeak, 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 squeak. Just like wheeling out.
You're just horrified. But it's like even like the Lotus stuff I thought was really bad. I thought when they actually drive to LA, because it's really confusing because in my brain's like I can get you guys to LA in like 4 hours, maybe 3. I'm like, you can get there in 2 if you go really fast. It's not that hard. And the weird thing though is now instead of going to like Capitol Records, they go to the Hollywood sign and they just go to the underworld, and this is where they meet pretty much Hades, who is like
Mick Jagger.
evil wackadoo man.
They even say that. They even call him Mick Jagger at one point. They're like, oh, that look works for you. Honestly, at the very least, he had his own kind of human-like characterization, because we were asking for more of that.
Well, I was expecting him
as
to
far
be
as the
more like the
gods.
devil the entire time. Like, I was expecting him to pull like a pitchfork and like poke Percy.
What was the description of him in the book? I think it was like he was very like suave.
Like, he's very tall. He's gaunt. He looks like he just gives off like exuberance of a god.
Yeah, I think the description of him was like way more graceful.
Like
than-
here, he looks like he just. When I think of the first thing is like he combs his hair and just grease just comes out.
Yeah, exactly. He looks like Russell Brand in like 10 years. You know?
And then he has the Master Bolt because it was in Luke's special shield. And he's like, I'm evil. I'm going to rule the gods. Ha ha. Like, he almost pretty much does like an evil laugh.
Yeah, his characterization is just so cartoony.
And like his wife Persephone stops him and he gives him the bolt.
Oh no.
This is where I almost stopped the movie and walked away because I forgot.
Are you talking about her and Grover?
Craig, you just this is just you and me. This is just us talking right now. You completely ruined the hero sacrifice. Completely.
Yep.
By having, we only have 3 pros, but we have Percy's mom. And Grover's like, I'll stay.
And then he's like, okay, okay, Grover.
What?
He just says, I'll stay. And then Percy goes, all right.
Are you on the moon?
He just agrees. He's like, okay, but we'll come back for you.
Like, that shouldn't have happened. It should have been the hero sacrifice. Again. Like, Percy, obviously, his mom's like, I have to stay. I love you, Percy. And then Percy does the thing. And then, obviously, all that stuff happens. And,
Yeah, it removes some agency from his mom, for sure.
well, it makes her basically, like, dead weight. And also, like, for a character that's supposed to be very strong and independent. She's like, help me, Percy, help me.
Yeah, it's really dumb.
Grover, yeah, you can stay here and go to, like, basically medieval, like, mystical hell. And I'll go with Percy.
The way that Percy just immediately accepts it. He's like, okay, you stay.
This is where the screenwriter, I kind of think he gave up a little bit. Like, he had his quota that he had to make, or his deadline, and he's just, let's go. And, I'm like totally like bashing the screenwriter, but there's like, I'm sure he's a very hardworking man.
I'm sure he's a very hardworking man.
He's written a lot of stuff, and it's just like it's very frustrating when you take like a book that has these central themes and then completely rework them to fit almost in like a happy bow ending.
Yeah, okay, so the ending is where things really go off the rails as
Oh,
far
they
as
they
plot.
haven't they've gone off the rails, B. Like the train has like completely gone off the rails. It is like it has hidden plenty of like train museums. It has gone through like a couple, places that teach like screenwriting. This train, and it's just plowing through a bunch of buildings right now.
It's a real situation. So they go back. There's like no fight with Ares because Ares isn't a character in this. They magically pop back.
Which, if you have like the picture of them like line, here's a fun game, listeners. At the end when they're all like meeting up, try to take a guess which one of them is probably Ares. Just when you have like all the shot of all the gods, you cannot tell.
You can't.
Like he's there in the universe, but he's not there.
He's not involved at all because the whole thing about Kronos doesn't exist. None of that exists in this plot. It's completely cut out. It's just Luke as a lone wolf doing all of this because of his own weird...
Because he just hates his dad. That's it. There's no, he doesn't even have, a reason.
It's supposed to be that he's, radicalized by the ideas of Kronos because he thinks that the gods,
are terrible people.
Are terrible and need to be taken down a peg. And, it makes sense that he was corrupted by Kronos, through, whatever, the whispering from Tartarus, hearing him in his mind, and that's why he was affected by that. And all of that is completely removed. So it's just this random kid who decides to do this. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and then they also figure out it was Luke very quickly. It isn't a big surprise at the end. It's this big battle on the Empire State Building, and they have this big old fight, which, I give credit. I like this fight. It's actually creative, how they're flying all over New York City.
For a split second, I didn't realize that he had put on the shoes with the feathers, or whatever, the shoes with the wings, and I was like, wait, why is Percy flying? He can fly? I was a little bit... because I had kind of spaced out for a second. Yeah, he puts on the shoes first, and then they have, a fight. And honestly, the thing with the water was kind of cool when he surrounded him by the walls of water, and, makes Luke drown, I guess.
So Percy flies up, and they only have 2 minutes to get up, 60,000 stairs, which would not take 2 minutes. And obviously he gets there right on time, and he kind of talks down the gods.
They don't land at the floor, the bottom floor, though. They land at the roof, don't they?
Yeah, they land on the roof.
So at least they have a little bit of a head start, I guess. Still, yeah, I like how his mom immediately knows exactly what things to press. She's like, bum, bum, bum.
And, they all live happily ever after as, Percy gets to talk to his dad for 2 seconds. Grover comes back from the underworld and he's got his horns.
And that's another thing, too, is there's some sort of rule about how gods can't see their kids in person, which doesn't exist in the books, which totally changes the character.
That is bullpucky, because in this movie, they completely destroy that by having Poseidon in the beginning of the movie looking creepily at Percy as a truck goes by and he disappears.
So it's it completely removes the accountability of Poseidon just being a bad dad onto being oh, well, there was a rule and I couldn't and I was there the whole time, and it completely removes all of that conflict.
And it's aggravating
because it's a
stupid,
rule.
It's aggravating.
Yeah.
And, we could talk about this entire movie, and it is one of those things that, oh God,
I'm sure there are people out there who like this movie, and I wouldn't blame them.
I'm sure. No, the reason why they like this movie is not because they've read the books, is because they've seen this movie. You know what? As a standalone movie, it is fine. If you know nothing of Percy Jackson, it's a very competently shot movie. Sure, the dialogue is kind of bad, and you know what? The script, I will give the person that wrote the script. If this was, nothing about Percy Jackson, or if it's a series, it could actually work as a movie.
You knew nothing. You really have to know nothing.
But you really
about it.
Really have to know nothing. You have to maybe have seen one movie in your entire life. What? A moving picture show? But then again, we're attacking at this from you're a literary person. I love film. I love everything about pop culture, and just how theater and scripts kind of work a little bit. We're looking at this kind of just being mad because it's this is the best that we can get from a movie, couple $1 million movie, $100 million movie here. This is the best we can get.
Yeah, they had all the money in the world to make this movie.
And there's no excuse, because it's you can compare and contrast with Chris Columbus. The first 2 Harry Potter movies, yes, they look outdated and silly, but they're very very, very, very close to the source material. Yes, things had to be cut for pacing, but it's very faithful. Everything looks like it's. You could obviously, if you saw it's Harry Potter, this you could turn it on and be like, "Oh, this isn't. What is this? What?" If you have read the books, it's a infuriating movie. If you've never seen a movie in your life, this is the first time ever seeing a movie. You might think it's one of the best movies ever made.
Yeah, I'm just like looking at this chart that someone made on the Rick Riordan wiki that compares the movie to the books, and there's just so many differences. It's crazy. Like, yeah, just if you want to look that up, you guys, like it's kind of insane.
I'll put it in the show
many
notes.
how many things were changed. Like, I mean, from really small details to like broad character things. Like, it's almost unrecognizable in a lot of ways. And not even in a way that makes sense or like saves time. It's just like an arbitrary decision that they made for some reason.
Like, I really just want to sit down and like just talk to all these people. Not just like this is not even like a bad like I'm not mad at them. I just want to talk to them and just see what was going behind the scenes. Because I think this is it's either a matter of the script just they rushed it. They just wanted to make a movie as quick and cheap as possible. They needed to just make a movie and not care about anything. This was a paycheck. Or the studio had like, we want to make like 12 of these, but then that makes no sense because why didn't you put in like Kronos and all these people, like have like the underlying...
Yeah, because then
thing.
there's nothing left for the plot to draw from if you cut out a bunch of characters. Like all of the stuff that's probably going to escalate in the books down the line are going to be non-existent because all you have is Luke as an antagonist.
And that's kind of the problem, though. The problem with this is obviously, if this was supposed to be a series, why didn't you have the underlying, the main villain kind of be in the shadows a little bit? They talk about him once in the movie, and that's it. He's kind of like set up, but he's not presented. And, obviously, there's not dreams. There's not any characterization. There's no, like, pass between Luke and Annabeth. There's no thing about, Annabeth's entire character. There's no story arc from anybody in this movie. It's like...
The mythos of the series is, like, completely deconstructed and simplified in a way that like doesn't allow for further elaboration down the line. Like it makes it so simple that it doesn't make sense why there would be a series.
I mean, it would make sense like if the studio just went, hey, we only have the rights for some reason to this one book. We just want to make it into a standalone movie. Boom, they've accomplished that. Yes. But then all of a sudden, oh wait, this is a series? Oh,
yeah. I guess it makes sense why they only made 2.
Well, it also makes sense, actually, that this is not the first time this has happened, where something like this happened. I guess maybe going back to J.K. Rowling, I know this. They wanted to do that before. They wanted to cut a specific character in Harry Potter, but J.K. Rowling said no, and they're like, why? And then she explained the reason on why, because he's a very crucial plot element to the story.
He's, like, important later on. Yeah, exactly. It's like, you can tell that this movie was made by someone who not only didn't read the books, but didn't even really understand where the story was going, because then they would have thought ahead to be like, oh right, I guess we do need these other characters to like be introduced earlier on so you understand like the motivations and like the larger issue brewing, because it also like really minimizes the conflict. Like, oh, it's just this one disgruntled kid who has like his own axe to grind about something. Like the level of stakes completely changes when it's just one kid instead of like this whole like brewing controversy between the gods and the Titans and him being like brainwashed by the Titans and like Ares being persuaded also, and like Kronos having his like own motivations for wanting to get rid of the gods. Like,
it's aggravating, and we could talk about this for hours, but in the end we're probably never going to watch this movie ever again, and people are like having so much fun listening to us talk and rant about how terrible it is. Like, the DVD that I own of this movie, because I own the DVD, unfortunately, there's a huge trailer just to say, read all of Rick Riordan's books. And then they have the audacity on that DVD to have a featurette talking about bringing the book to life.
It's like, you brought something to life. I don't know what, but I mean, they actually kind of brought it to lifelessness, but
It's almost like, I just imagine like Rick Riordan is Dr. Frankenstein, and he's just like witnessing the horror of, his monster being created. Father, why won't you love me? And Rick Riordan's like, oh my God, kill it, burn it with fire. So I just compared Rick Riordan to Dr. Frankenstein. This is, yeah.
Yeah, we're truly spiraling. Yeah, I mean, I even admit, like, the reason I read Unfortunate Events the first time is because I watched the the movie that they made in the early 2000s, and I was like, oh, this seems cool, this seems up my alley, maybe I'll like the books. And like that completely changed the path of my life, and that's like a book series that I really love. And I can only appreciate this movie in the sense that I know that there's some kids out there who were like, oh, I like this whole Greek myth thing and like the vague concepts behind it. I bet it's a lot more in depth in the books. Let me see what that's all about. Let me go to the library and check that out. So I hope that that's the case.
We also did propose this question on to Twitter. So people did send in why they liked or hated this movie. So we're going to read a couple of them.
Oh, yeah. I forgot that you did this.
So from Chris, the movie has such a weird rep. The movie is a cool movie. It's just has almost nothing to do with Percy Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if you change the name to it, I'm sure it'd be a competent movie in its own right if it wasn't Percy Jackson.
Yeah, it's hard to not look at it through that lens, I guess. I'm really bad at like being able to separate adaptations out and be like, okay, does this stand alone?
Well, the problem is if we had done our podcast where you watched the movie first and then we read the books, maybe it would have been different. And I said nothing about it. You might have liked the movie, or maybe you might have hated it more.
Yeah, who knows?
So from Amateur Writer 1, I think as a standalone movie, it is a fine, kind of boring family movie, but with the context from reading the books, it's butchered the source material, and it makes it really worse and distracting, but it did get me into reading the book series. So
There you
yes, I
go.
guess, yes, it accomplished that. Where people, saw the movie and then wanted to read the books. So from Helene, I like it just because it got me into Percy Jackson smiley face. I hate because it's the worst book adaptation there is. Oh no, there are
I'm
far
sure there are way
worse
worse ones,
adaptations.
What's like the worst book adaptation you've ever seen?
The worst adaptation, that's obvious, has to go to The Last Airbender.
Oh yeah, I never saw it. Well, that's a TV show adaptation.
Yeah, but
though.
it's the same principle.
Yeah, I guess. I'm trying to think of any book adaptations that I've seen.
Book adaptations that I would say that I've seen. Oh, The Vampire's Assistant.
Oh, I've never seen that one. I also didn't read the book, so trying to think.
Actually, no, I take that back. I'm so sorry. I can go further than this. The Seventh Son.
What is that?
Jeff Bridges. It's a dark fantasy book series with like people eating people's hearts and drinking blood to Jeff Bridges' action fantasy movie.
I can't think of anything. Honestly, I like a lot of the Roald Dahl movies out there. I guess maybe the Tim Burton Willy Wonka is pretty bad. Yeah, that one's pretty bad.
Well, also, it's like everyone just looks plasticky in that movie. Like, they look like they're Barbie dolls.
Yeah, and like the weird CG chocolate and stuff. And yeah, I think that's not very good. Honestly, I think Where the Wild Things Are was pretty good.
Yeah, it's like one of those movies that's kind of like an acquired taste as well, but it's a very like art housey movie.
Yeah, I didn't like it so much when I first saw it, but I think it grew on me.
Like one of my favorite Roald Dahl movies is The Witches, even though it has nothing to really do with the book series or the book. It is like amazing. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's insane. I haven't read The Witches in a long time.
It's almost different in like every way, shape, or form, but like it's entertaining in a different way. Like it's okay to have movies and books go completely different. They just have to be entertaining. This was not entertaining to watch. Like even like the fourth Harry Potter movie, which is kind of different. Like some of the challenges are a little different and stuff. Not that they are, but like there's certain things that people don't like about it. They get rid of like big plot points and side stories. I think it's an okay movie. It does what it's supposed to do. It's Harry Potter, the fourth movie. So from I'd Rather Not. I'd Rather Not. Thank you for the Patreon donation of $10. That's amazing.
Oh yeah, that's our new Patreon patron. That's like so cool. I know that he posted like onto one of your tweets and was like, "Hey, I just discovered your podcast," and then like immediately became a patron, which was really cool.
Which is amazing, and he binge watched our entire show and everything about
binge
it's amazing.
listened. I hope you're not watching us.
If he is, that's okay. You can watch. You can watch us. That's okay.
I look out my window. There he is.
And you just hear like bushes like rustle, both from New York and California at the same time. So from I'd Rather Not. I absolutely hate it. The actors were all in their 20s. I think the girl who played Annabeth was close to 30. It's weird for them to play teens.
Close to 30.
It's kind of like in Grease and how John Travolta and everyone was like 30 while making grease and is
Yeah.
trying to play high school
Have you
teachers.
seen the movie Uncle Buck?
Oh, I love. Yes, we've talked about Crazy Uncle Buck with John Hughes.
I love Uncle Buck. It's a great movie. But the teenager in that, I forgot her name. She's supposed to be 15, and I'm pretty sure the actress was like 19 in that.
So to continue, there were a lot of great parts of the book taken out. It's so upsetting. I really do hope Netflix remakes this show. I would imagine if they're going to remake this show, and this is all speculation, if Disney acquires the rights to 20th Century Fox and decides to greenlight a series, it would probably be on their new streaming service that Disney's trying to create.
Oh, they're trying to make a streaming service.
Best way to do it, yeah.
Right, because then they would have the budget and stuff to maybe do something. Maybe like not like a series, but like more like a mini series almost, where like each book was
a season. Each book would be a season. Which, that model does work. If you look at the series Unfortunate Events, they did it.
Yeah.
All the kids are relatively the same age.
Yeah. You can do it. It's possible.
So from To Be Pencil. Honestly, I discovered the film before the books as its own thing, and it's not that bad. But as an adaptation, there are a lot of things that bug me. Little things like Annabeth's hair color and how they aged up the characters, although it's more understandable than other things. How Percy and Annabeth are the opposite side of the capture the flag, or how Clarice and Aries are not present in the film. It's not big things, but I wish they get it right. But on the other hand, I think Logan Lerman as older Percy and that guy who played Luke.
That guy who played Luke.
That guy with that hair.
The guy with the face.
Like, that guy, he kind of looked like if they took Matt Damon's face now and put it on a teenager's body a little bit.
Hold on, wait, I want to look at a picture of him. Yeah, a little bit, you're right.
But yeah, no, that's kind of like our little weird escapade into this movie to book. And next week we're going to be getting really into the Sea of Monsters.
Yeah, we sure are.
I'm super excited to start reading this book. It's going to be, even though it's not my favorite out of all of them, I still has a special place in my heart.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where the series goes. Again, we're gonna be reading this painfully slowly. So I got really badly spoiled by something accidentally the other day because I was looking up to see how many books are in Percy Jackson and the Olympians series, and there was like a quick synopsis of one of the books. I glanced for like a second, and I accidentally saw like, yeah, I saw someone dies. So that's a thing.
Oh my God, B, don't tell me who dies. I don't want to know. I don't want to be spoiled.
You don't want to get spoiled. Yeah, from the book that you read growing up.
So we do have some iTunes reviews. So the first one we have is from Angel Fire. It just says, "Love it.
Love it.
I love that you guys always read, then explain things. Thank you." And so many hearts, it's like I'm having like a mini heart attack. Thank you so much, Angel Fire. What's the next one, B?
The next one is Love the Show from Tanner Tan. I grew up reading Percy Jackson. I love the show so far. As I'm catching up, I would like to point out that it's not that Gabe smells bad, it's that he smells so innately human that it masks Percy's god smell that...
It just ends.
You kind
right
of got cut off there, but... oh no, the Minotaur got him. 4-star review. Did we lose a star because we don't know about Gabe? I'm sorry.
I thought it was supposed to be that he's just a gross person, because he smokes cigars. I mean, if he was supposed to be so averagely human, why didn't Sally Jackson marry an accountant named Chad or something?
Well, he's also potently human, though. It's not just... yeah, anyway.
Well, I mean, but the problem is he's super disgusting.
It's the sweat.
Well.
The sweatiness is the essence of his humanness.
It's
I
okay.
guess. I don't know.
4 stars, we'll take it. I ain't complaining.
Yep.
Last one. I really like this podcast from Pastel Penguin. This is one of the podcasts I really keep up with, and I've listened to episode 22. I read Percy Jackson when I was 8, and I am now 14. I still keep up with Rick Riordan's books. I hope you keep up the great work, and I hope you enjoy the rest of those books. Oh, I love the rest of his books. They're all amazing.
That's very nice.
So before we make our getaway, B, where can they find you?
If you want to find me on Twitter, I'm at bkellygorman, and on Tumblr, I'm twinpoetry.tumblr.com.
And if you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Suda41. That's SUDA41. If you want to follow our show on Twitter, that is at halfblood_radio. If you want to email our show and send us any amazing messages, we'll totally read on the air. We're actually saving all of our messages for next week just to have like them all built up because they're all more specifically for the next book. You can email us at radiocamphhalfblood@gmail.com. Well, B, we got to get into this getaway car because we have to like get to the marina to get to the
Maserati.
sea. Yeah, to the Maserati. This episode is sponsored apparently by Maserati and iPods and the Lotus Casino.
Oh, I forgot about the iPod. Oh my god, the reflective iPod. It's a dumb movie, Zach. It's so dumb.
Well, we gotta get out of here. This movie's gonna be the death of us. I'm Zach.
I'm B.
And keep staying immortal. Not you, movie. Just leave.
No,
just
not
rather
you.
than die. Bye.
Bye.